Hey guys, it's Wade. You saw the video that we did last, which was the unboxing of the Exceed RC Mini X concept. Now we're going to go ahead and build it. I went through the directions a little bit, basically 13 steps. This thing is super simple, so we're going to build it. We're not going to do any modifications to it whatsoever. We're going to leave it completely 3-channel. We're going to not add a rudder. We're just going to keep it the way that it was supposed to be. You can see right here basically that I have all the parts that we need. We've got our main wing assembly, alright. We've got the 2 rear horizontal stabilizers, and we've got the rear vertical stabilizer, and then we've got the canopy. Alright, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and then we've got the fuselage. I forgot about that right there. Alright, other than that, it's just a few peripheral items like landing gear if you want to put them on, and then also your control rods, which we'll show you how to put those on here in a second. So, per the directions, which we like to follow until we realize that they don't work. First things first, you're going to find your control, your servo Y harness, alright? Now your servo Y harness is going to come in that main accessory bag, alright? And if it's not in the accessory bag, then it will be already attached to one of the servo leads inside of the fuselage. Alright, and what you're going to do basically is you're going to find your servo leads that come from the wing, and you're simply going to plug those in. Simple, like that. Alright. Plug them in like that. Alright, and then you're going to take your wing and you're going to set it off to the side. Alright. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to find the fuselage. On the bottom of the fuselage, and see if you can see that right there, you've got 2 screws. One there and one there. And what that is basically the cover for your EDF unit. You're going to need to take that off. It's just a simple Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to take that off so that it's going to enable you to actually install the wing. Let me get my handy dandy screwdriver out. But basically, just take this off. The screws aren't on there very tight at all. Now it helps if you don't shake like me, but take your screws off. What that's going to do is basically expose the EDF unit. Just like so. You can see it's actually a decent little EDF unit in there. Alright, everything's wired up nice and tight. When you have this off, make sure that it's nice and mounted in there, nice and tight. Make sure there's nothing loose, everything looks good, because once you get it buttoned up, you're going to have to take the whole plane apart basically. Alright, so next, you'll notice on your wing, on the wing itself right here, alright, you've got a little tab that's going to insert, like so, basically right into the fuselage right there. Alright, now first things first, what you're going to do is you're going to take your Y harness. This is kind of hard to do with one hand, but you're going to feed your Y harness through the little slat that's in the fuselage. Alright, feed it through. Alright, give yourself a little bit of room to work with. Alright, let's try this again. Pull my lead through a little bit, and then I'm going to have to feed that through one by one. Alright, I'm going to have to devise a method to get this in here really quick. Let me figure out how to get this in and I'll get right back with you. You can see this is going to be one of the pains in the butts, is trying to get this through the actual fuselage in one piece. So let me figure out how to do that, I'll get back with you, and then we'll tell you exactly what we found out, how to get rid of this problem. Okay, as you can see, I've got the Y harness, which is right here, fed completely through there. Basically what you're going to have to do is make sure that the servo leads are snapped all the way in, and you're going to have to feed them through that tiny little hole, which if you don't know if you can see it down there, but there's a tiny little hole. You have to feed them in there all at once. Alright, you got to push them through, otherwise if you try to pull them with the Y harness, and what it's going to do is just disconnect the servo leads. Okay, on the bottom this is what it's going to look like. This wing will just insert straight into that little area right there. What that leaves us with is an empty cover, or an open cover for the EDF unit. Alright, then we will take that empty little cover, we'll install it right back on top where it needs to go. Alright, make sure you don't over tighten it, especially with these little plastic parts. You don't want to strip them out. Alright, got our EDF covered now. That is the wing installation. Alright, simple. That thing's not coming off. Good to go. Alright, so next, once we've got the wings installed, we're going to go ahead and work on the rear of the airplane. First things first, we're going to go ahead and install the rear horizontal stabilizers. Alright, so let me get everything prepped. I'll tell you what I needed to do to get everything done, and we'll get back with you as soon as we figure out what's going on. Alright, just like I said before, what we're going to do is work on our maybe I learned to talk, rear horizontal stabilizer. You can see right here we've got one side already on. We've test fitted it just to make sure that it's going to stay on and make sure it fits nice and flat, as you can see right there. Alright, so let me go into basically how I did that. First things first, what I did is I'm going to take a hobby knife, just like so. Alright, I'll try to hold this up here the best I can so you can see it. But the little slot that the wing goes into, basically I'm just going to rough it up with my hobby knife, like so. Alright, just rough it up. Now get some of the paint off, but just don't damage the foam that much, alright? Rough it up with your hobby knife. Next, take the piece that you're actually going to go ahead and put in there, and you're going to sand it off. Alright, you want to sand off some of that paint. The reason being that we're sanding off the paint is because we want the glue itself to adhere to the foam and not the paint. Because if that paint starts peeling off, it's basically just going to pull this piece nice and loose. Now you can see right there, got the paint off. Alright, looking nice and roughed up. What we're going to do now, we're actually going to take our CA glue, okay? We're going to beat it all up inside of this little slit right here, this little slot. Alright, now if you put a little bit extra CA, it's fine, because all it's going to do is kind of like blob out, and then you can smooth it off with your finger and then activate a nice little bead seam around it. And that'll actually just give you a little bit more stability. Alright, so feel free to be a little bit liberal with this CA glue, which we're going to have to order some more CA glue here soon. Alright. Now, we've got it in there. Let that glue kind of work its way around. Then what you're going to do is take this piece, and this is just for quick setting purposes. Spray a little bit of that activator on there, and then hurry up and slide it in there before that activator evaporates. Alright, make sure it's nice and even. Hold it in there, and let it set and cure. And then basically you should see that they're nice and even. Alright, if something's crooked, you know you got something wrong. Okay, so that was our horizontal stabilizers on the back. I'm going to let this cure for a second. I'm going to run some glue basically along the edges just to make sure that it's nice and cured and nice and sturdy, and then we'll move on to the vertical stabilizer. Alright, welcome back. So basically you can see we've got everything hooked up. Everything's cured and dried, and the reason we want it cured and dried is because we're going to go ahead and put this vertical stabilizer on. Alright, right here, vertical stabilizer. That's going to go on in the exact same method. This is already bare foam. You can see it's white, so you're not going to need to scratch it up or rough it up if you don't want to. Not necessary. However, on the bottom of this, it's not exactly bare foam, so I'm going to sand it down a little bit just in case. Alright, now while I'm talking, I'll just sand it down. Alright, one thing that we did notice with this airplane, and like I said, we got this RTF, or disregard, yeah, we got an RTF, that's why we don't have anything. But we got this ARF. Now, one of the problems that we noticed is that the landing gear does not come with like a servo to control the rudder. We said that the rudder is going to be ineffective because it doesn't have a rudder servo. And what that means for us too is that it doesn't have a nose gear servo either. Alright, there is an option without a rudder, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. There is an option right there in the front. You can see that little hole that's right there on the nose, alright? That is going to be the servo that's specifically for steering your nose gear if you decide not to use the rudder function on the actual airplane. We don't have that in there yet, but we're going to install that later. I think we're going to stick with hand launches and grass launches just because we've got nice, soft, plush, beautiful, gorgeous, amazing green grass where we fly. Yeah. Oh, anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish installing the vertical stabilizer. Ooh. Once I get that on, let it cure, then we're going to install the control rods into the control horns, which we do have to install still, and we'll press on. And then that pretty much means we're almost done. So let me go ahead and work on that real quick. Alright, and I'll get back with you, or I'll turn the camera back on as soon as I'm done installing it. Alright, welcome back. Basically what we're going to do now that everything's on there nice and tight. Alright, looking good, doesn't it? Oh, it's awesome. This thing's actually bigger than I thought it was going to be. We're going to install our control horns. Now, what I did previous, or what you're supposed to do previous, is basically just work in your control surfaces. Make sure they're nice and loose, because the last thing you want to do is be binding up your servos. Alright? We're going to work on horizontal stabilizers in the back. Now, Exceed already puts in some control horns that already have the quick connectors. As you can see right here, they're the ones with the quick connectors already on there. So that's what we're going to use for the two horizontal stabilizers in the back. Now each control surface in the back on the horizontal stabilizer has its own servo horn, or servo control horn, or control rod. Maybe I'll get this right one day. They have each of their own. It's all connected to the same servo up front. It's just two wires running from the same servo. So first things first, you're going to want to make sure that this flat part right here, and I know that's hard to see, but that flat part is facing towards the front of the aircraft. Alright, that's the proper way to install it. Now you can see, once I hold this up, you can see there's actual little marks right there for where the servo control horns are going to go. Alright. Also included in the package are the servo back plates. These look like this. I know it's kind of hard to see, but that's what they look like. They are going to go and basically sandwich the foam between it. Now, in a little baggie like this, there's going to be all your screws. Basically what it's going to require is you just screw 4 screws in and sandwich those two pieces together. Word of advice: undo the little teeny Allen wrench. Okay, you want to undo the little teeny Allen wrench or Allen nut that is inside of that control horn. Alright, let me put this light on there so you can see it. Maybe I could see it. Alright, right there. Ooh, look at that. Look at how you can't see that. Unscrew that so that your control rod will slip right through it. Okay, and I'm on the wrong side. You're going to make sure that slips right through before you install anything, and you're going to leave it loose. You want to leave it loose. Alright, you want to give yourself the ability to leave it loose so it slides back and forth. Why? Because you're going to tighten the screws down, and that control horn is going to be in place, and it's not going to be really that movable because it's going to be screwed in. So what that's going to allow you to do is bind your aircraft whenever you put a receiver in it. You'll bind it. What it's going to do is center everything out. Once this servo is bound and then centered, then you can tighten down the quick connect on the end of it to tighten down that control horn or control rod, and you're good to go. Then it should only take you like 1, maybe 2 clicks just to center it out or digitally trim it, and this thing should fly straight as an arrow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and install both of these control horns onto the actual surfaces, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the actual ailerons on the aircraft. Same thing with the ailerons. Make sure you pre-loosen up all the ailerons there so that they're nice and loose and your servos aren't going to get overworked. Alright, so let me do that, get back with you, and tell you if I had any problems or anything. Alright, welcome back. Basically what you can see is, right here, I've got the 2 elevator control horns on. Alright, control rods are through, but not tightened, because like I said, you want a little bit of play, so that when you go ahead and bind it, everything's centered. Now as far as the ailerons, you can see I got that too. Alright, everything's nice and hooked up, ready to go. Alright, next what we're going to work on is basically putting on our skid. Our skid is going to go right here. This is basically kind of a 2-part. It's a skid and it's a little hand launch, so you can hold on and hand launch it a little bit easier. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and glue that. Actually, the only thing you really need to do, hash up this a little bit with the hobby knife and glue it on. There it is in the package right there. You don't really got to worry about sanding that or hashing it because it's just straight bare foam. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that on, and then we're going to go ahead and leave off the landing gear, which will typically mount in there. Alright, we'll leave off the landing gear for now until we get it nice and CG'd out, and then we're going to fly it without landing gear so we can land it and crash it into the grass and not have to worry about it. So that's that. Let me go ahead and glue this in there, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so I've got it glued on there. It's nice and firm. That's going to give you a buffer zone between when it hits the ground too and hitting your servos. I don't like how that mounted the servos on the actual wing itself. Alright, because it's could be a ground lander, but you could tear up your servo horns, things like that. So I'm not a big fan of it. That's why I went ahead and put this little hand plate on there. The launch pad or launch grip or whatever you want to call it. Alright, so now the only thing we have left to do is basically take the canopy off. We're going to install our receiver, which I think we're going to use a newer one on the market. You guys have all heard of the orange series receivers typically sold at Hobby King. We're going to use their version of AS3X, artificial stability. Alright, so we're going to put that in there, and then we'll kind of give you a two-part review on how this plane flies and also how it flies with that basically orange version of AS3X. I'm not sure what it's called right now. So we'll go ahead and we'll install that. I'm pretty sure that you can install it by simply plugging this in to your receiver, but if you need help, we'll go ahead and put a video up too on installing a receiver and get everything bound. But you should know how to do it, especially if you're flying this sort of an airplane. Alright, this thing is supposed to be pretty quick, so we're going to see what's going on with that. Alright, so what we're going to do is plug up our receiver. The battery that we're going to use is recommended anywhere from 800 to 1000 milliamp 3S LiPo battery. Now make sure the batteries that you're using on this thing, make sure that you're using at least 30C. Otherwise you're not going to get any performance. It won't really climb out, do anything you want it to do. So use at least a 30C battery, okay, in this airplane, and go for 800 to 1000. We're going to go for 1000 so we get a little bit longer flight times. Alright, so get this thing finalized, make sure everything looks trimmed out, and we'll see you at the field. Again, thanks for watching Wade's RC Hangar. If you have any questions about this particular aircraft, just write it down in the comments box and I will get right back to you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, we are on Facebook at facebook.com/WadesRCblog. That's facebook.com/WadesRCblog. So thanks again for watching, guys, and you have a good one.